Hello again, Space Cadets, and welcome to another episode of Survive Unplugged, your after show for your daily download of Everything Survive Season 2. My name is Zach Kruger, your favorite pre-juror from Season 1, and today we're going to talk everything all about the players in the Merge. And I have a very special guest again today, a former number one alliance member of mine, made it all the way to the final two. Welcome, Barry Ishikawa. Hi, Barry. How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Zach?
Good. How have you been since your second placement?
I've been good. Just kind of living life in San Diego and very excited to be out here for a few days, able to come in, help out, and see everyone. It's been a really good time.
Yeah, so I invited you here because who better to talk about players in the Merge than somebody who's literally beaten every player in the Merge, right? So, and what are you doing for us here on production this season?
Yeah, so a lot of camera work. It's been fun learning some of the audio-visual stuff. And besides that, or specifically, I've been working a lot on confessionals. So I'm the one who's prompting questions, getting all the information from the players, and generally just trying to figure out all that's going on, where the alliances fall, and figure out all the dynamics with that.
So it sounds like you're not only dialed into what it takes to be in the Merge and beat the players in the Merge and get far, but you are dialed into this season's inner workings of the players' minds. Like every single confessional you've been filming, right? Pretty much?
Yeah,
okay.
100%.
And today we merged in the morning, so we've had confessionals from the Merge, we've got confessionals from 2 tribal councils now, and we're about to wait the results of the next one. So that's even unknown to us, which is very exciting, which gives us a great opportunity to go through. I was hoping we could go through every player one-on-one. Did you have a format you wanted to use?
Yes, so I created a power rankings list. Power rankings, if you're not familiar with it, is basically just kind of a comprehensive list of ranking each player where they're at in terms of how good of a chance I think, how well positioned they are, and how strong of a chance I think they have to win in the given state at the time.
So what is this based on? Is this based off like idols, alliances?
Yeah, a lot of it ultimately comes down to kind of social structure, strategic, where players, like what have players done, how are they perceived by their tribe mates in the game, do they have allies that they can utilize to get further into the game.
So I'm assuming lower on the list, we're not thinking they're going to get far because they haven't had any advantages. They don't seem to have very many allies in the game. Whereas higher on the list, you're like, that person is going to win the game.
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but it doesn't, you could still be lower on the list and go far, but it means that I perceive their chances of actually taking home the crown as being lower.
Is there anybody on season 1 that you might have put on a lower ranking in a power list that actually made it farther and surprised you?
From season 1, who was
you don't have to necessarily name any names, but I was just curious.
Oh, I mean, yeah, there are people where, a lot of times big threats get targeted at the beginning of the Merge, and then and if there's someone that's not as big of a threat and they're able to skate by a little bit, it eventually turns to a point where when you're getting towards the end of the game, you have to take out the big threats and the people you can beat at the end, and someone who's very beatable can sneak in there and steal your spot right at the end. So yeah, I think it's a pretty common thing that happens in the real show. It's a pretty common thing that happens in these live games. Yeah, I think there's definitely an example too from our season where that happened, and a lot of times, people can use that to their own strategy as well to get further and give themselves a chance.
Absolutely.
So it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah,
I
I personally don't think that there's such a thing as a GOAT as long as the GOAT has a great final tribal speech, right? We've seen it happen many times in live reality games and games that are actually on live TV. So I'm so curious to see what your list looks like. Do you want to go ahead and get started so we can?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well, we can. So yeah.
Oh,
this is
here's our Merge tribe. Do they have a name?
Nibiru.
It's again with the vowels. Is it Nibiru? I have no idea.
I'm not sure, but I'll call him Nibiru.
Okay, we'll look it up later.
Or just Merge tribe.
So we have 12 players in this Merge tribe, and not necessarily every player here is going to make jury, correct?
Correct. The first person voted out this morning is not going to be on jury. As far as I know, after that, from 11 onward, we'll make jury.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and talk about our first player. the lovely G.
So G is at the bottom of my power ranking list,
Oh.
mostly because she was voted out this morning.
Well then that makes sense.
So just to kind of recap people, this morning, it's been basically from the swap, it was very tribal lines between Jovian. If you start out on Jovian, you've been working with Jovian. If you start out with Blizzard, you've been working with Blizzard. At the merge, it was 7 Jovian and 5 Blizzard.
Especially because that battle back brought Josh back in.
Exactly.
Correct?
So Josh came back last night from the battle back. It was 6 Jovian to 5 Blizzard, but with Josh back, he went back to a tribe with all old Jovian, and he was old Jovian. And so this first vote, they essentially had 7 to Blizzard's 5. He sided with them this vote. They stuck together. They put all their votes on G, and worth noting at that tribal, Jorge played his idol, and he was up in the air between playing it for himself or playing it for G. He ended up playing it for himself, and then his idol got flushed, and then G got sent packing out the door.
Another interesting thing I think happened at that tribal with an advantage in the game. I saw that there was a vote for Alex that was crossed out and scratched out by the aliens. What was that about? And does that have any significance to this particular vote with G?
I don't think that has a ton of significance. It was a Zappa vote, so basically, and it was played by Jeff. So Jeff had an advantage where he could block one person's vote in a tribal council, and so he played it to prevent. I think in order to prevent any chance of Josh potentially flipping and to ensure that his Jovian tribe had the numbers, so it helped solidify that they would have the numbers control, which going into that, they now have the numbers control 7-4, which is a decently decisive advantage at this point in the game.
I 100% agree. So we can definitely talk more about Jeff and Jorge when it comes to their advantage use later. I'm curious to see where they land on your power list now that they don't have any advantages that I know of anyway. What else do we have to say about G? She's our last preacher, right?
Yeah,
okay.
G. I
played so well.
G played a great game.
So well.
G came into this, I don't think really knowing much at all about Survivor, and it was really fun to see kind of the game, her learn about certain things and have the game kind of unfold in front of her and her figuring it out along the way. She did really well socially. I think everyone really gravitated to her, really warm personality.
Wildly strong in challenges.
Very strong in challenges. She, kicked a lot of people's butts in those challenges. Very, very strong girl and a solid player, and I hope we get to see her again in other games because I think coming in not having that much experience, or not any experience or really familiarity with the show, she did a really, really good job.
I totally agree.
So, lovely person. Glad we get to hang out with her on pre-jury. So
we'll see. Maybe more G to come.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next player, Barry. Who do you have?
So the next player on the list is Jorge, who, if that idol play worked, he would probably be number 1 or 2 on my list. But just coming from confessionals, I am about 99% sure he's getting voted out right now.
Rats!
He was pretty upset. He played a really, really strong game. He was very closely linked with almost everyone on his old Blizzard. Everyone seemed to have both him and James in thinking that they were in a tight 3 or tight 4 with both of them. I think the game went south when Jorge, he had an idol, was well positioned on his tribe, but then he got a Galaxy Curse where he was essentially able to, he picked a name out of a bag, and if he could get that person out the next round, he would be able to get an idol at the next...
Another idol?
Yes. And the person he picked was Alex, who he targeted and then played his idol on himself, but he ended up, in essence, burning his own idol and then not gaining the other one, leaving himself exposed. And I think that the Jovians really saw him as a major social threat, and the consensus is what I've heard is they were targeting either him or James, and it seems like the vote was going to fall on him.
That vote is happening right now. So we'll post this later after the vote, so you guys will know. But as far as we know, he's not voted out yet. He's still in the game. What would it take for him to stay in the game, Barry?
Some craziness at tribal.
I haven't seen yet, but
some craziness at tribal. But I mean, ultimately, it's going to come down to getting people from the Jovian side to flip, because this has been such a divisive game between Jovian and Blizzard. There has been no crossing at all, and even on just listening to people in confessionals, there aren't a ton of people are saying that they're open to working across tribal lines, but people also don't seem to have, like, they're not sure who they want to work with on the other side. It doesn't seem like there's strong bonds connecting from what I'm hearing from the confessionals. So it's not a lot of like, oh, I really like you, I 100% want to work with you, I'm going to make sure that you're safe and we can work together in a vote or two.
I find that so interesting, and I feel like you find that interesting too. To me, this type of gameplay is a little boring. Isn't building the relationships part of the first part of the game, and isn't the second part supposed to be the strategic part of the game? Like, I don't necessarily feel the need to absolutely adore an alliance member halfway through the game. I feel like I just need to have a common enemy.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. Part of the problem with, I think, this situation, though, is that there really wasn't, like, at the swap, the way that the numbers swapped and the way that they hit the merge, there were so many people from Jovian who had never played with anybody from Blizzard and vice versa.
Okay.
So there really wasn't any opportunity for them to meet, and then they merge in the morning, have a few hours before the vote, and from their mentality, it's thinking, am I going to flip with these people who I just met, or am I going to work with the people who I've been with for the last 3 days?
And it's so much easier to go.
Exactly.
Status quo.
And if you have the numbers, it's like, it can get me one vote further. Why would I not utilize that?
I'm so curious to see who's next on your list, because it's like half of those people will be successful in that strategy, and the other half will wish they had flipped at some point.
Yep. And I do think the game will blow open at some point. I think it might be next round, but it's going to be, based on how it's going, I think the Blizzard players have a pretty uphill battle.
All right, well,
Which you'll see.
Let's look. What do you have next for us?
Next on my list is Josh.
There he is. This is our Battleback winner.
Yeah, so this is Josh. He was our Battleback winner. He was on Old Jovian. So I guess this kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, but Josh is, I think, in a pretty tough spot. I think first and foremost, it's going to be really hard for anybody to win the game if they have been voted out. That's just, I think a lot of people have a perception of, if you've been voted out, your chances of winning are going to be harder coming back unless you do some really big, amazing stuff. Josh, since he's come back into the game, he has linked up with his old allies. So he got brought to the Acela tribe, and so he's been linked with
Lena.
He's been linked with Lena, Ryan, and Alex.
And from what I heard, he and Alex and maybe Carrie were working on something way early in the game. Is that something that you heard as well?
I had not arrived yet, so I hadn't heard the full details of that.
That was what I heard, so I'm curious to see how that's shaking out.
Yeah.
Carrie's gone, Alex is in the game, what's happening?
Yeah, so they do have, so he is linked with Alex, and I think that's probably his top person at this point, and I know that they do want to utilize Josh as a number. Part of the problem, though, I think for Josh is I don't see him, the old Blizzard he kind of burned because they tried to use him as a number, which logistically made sense because he got burned pretty hard by his old Jovians, but then decided to go back and work with them instead of flipping to Blizzard to tie it up 6-6.
That would be 6-6, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good odds, I say, even if you have to draw rocks, right?
Yes, I think it's pretty good. I mean, wherever you're going to come back into the game, when you've been out for so long, you're probably going to be at the bottom of either alliance. But I think if you flip and he was to work with the Blizzard, he would have had a little bit more agency because he positions himself as more of a swing vote potentially going forward in that realm. Whereas now, I think his problem is he's clearly at the bottom of the old Jovians, but then they basically can pluck him off whenever they want because they don't really need him as a number
and
anymore.
He no longer has the numbers to flip, so he would have to drag Alex along with him. Is that a possibility?
I think it's more the other way around, where Alex and his alliance would pull in Josh. I think they have way more agency than Josh does at this point.
So you have there's no incentive for Alex to maybe take Josh and be like, all right, let's pick off a couple of these old Blizzard members and then create a whole new cross-tribal alliance and break the game open?
No, I think there is incentive for that. I just think that it's going to be, I think would be a great plan for Alex. I just think it's going to be tough. I think that's a great move for Alex, and I think it is a good move for Josh, but Josh is going to need to get to a point where he's going to differentiate himself from that because he's low man on the totem pole, so he needs to work his way into an alliance and then find a way to elevate himself up to the alliance, whether that's creating a plan with someone else back and forth, flipping back and forth. But it's just generally speaking, it's a tough spot where he's at, because I think he doesn't have a lot of power at this point.
Right.
And I think he's just kind of viewed as an easy option should they go back to, or at one of the next tribal councils potentially.
All right, well, I'm rooting for Josh. I love picking up players that have nobody, because that's a number for me. But I guess we'll see what happens, right, Barry?
Yep.
Who do you have next?
Next on my list, I have Amanda.
Amanda!
So Amanda is, she is on Old Blizzard. I think she's played a really strong game so far.
Solid.
Really solid. She really was very social in her Old Blizzard tribe and was able to work herself into a tight alliance with a lot of strong players there. The problem for her right now is Jorge was her #1 ally, and and G was also a very strong ally for her. So she's kind of running out of options at this point. Basically, I think for the other Blizzard people, Angela and James are both set up better to potentially work across tribal lines going forward. Amanda, what I'm a little surprised by, she's kind of a free floater or option in this next round, and
100%.
I think that Jovian players should be working on trying to utilize her in future votes. But when I've talked with them, there hasn't been a lot of talk of, I want to pull in Amanda, I need to use Amanda. Even though I think she could be a very good weapon to use, because she really doesn't have power. Assuming Jorge went this round or is going this round, she doesn't have power, but she can be utilized as a vote and still has value in that once the Jovians do turn on each other.
And she has the benefit, even though nobody wanted to work with her during the very first Galaxy Curse, she has the benefit of having lived with many Jovian players already. They did not want to work with her. She was completely iced out, blocked. But she could be the one that says, hey, I know you iced me out before, but there's going to come a point where you're going to need one extra number, and that could be me.
And I think that's what she's trying to do right now, but they're still icing her out, so it's a little tough.
It's a short-sighted game for some people, don't you think?
Potentially, yes, because I think, which we'll get to in a bit, I think there's some people on Jovian that are playing that aren't thinking 2 steps ahead, and then the ones that are going to cut you before they get to that point. And I think that people should be using Amanda as an option for them, and they just aren't at this point. Whereas both Angela and James, I think, are a little bit set up better for that. So ultimately, we'll see what happens, but I think she's playing really well. It's more just her being low on this list is a product of circumstance, and also point out she's one of the only new players here who's never played a live game before.
Because a lot of our new players got cut pre-jury.
Pre-jury, yeah, and then a lot of these people who are in the game have either won games before or made final tribals or almost won games before. So it's a loaded cast. So it's a group of very strong players. We're just hoping that they start playing more creatively than just going by tribal lines.
And what I know from Amanda, she's not just sitting around waiting to get picked up. She may be a new player, but she is playing the game.
She's playing hard. She is very much playing the game.
So I'm honestly, this is one of my picks. I would love to see Amanda move forward. So
I would love to too. She's one of my best friends outside the game.
Oh, okay. Well, we're a little biased there. Your winner pick?
Yes.
Well,
initially.
Initially, okay.
Right now, you'll see my winner.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to our next one. This is James, another Blizzarian.
Yep.
Is that what we're calling them now?
Yes.
Okay.
Another Blizzarian.
Tell me about James.
Yeah, so James is, I think, in a similar spot, not in a great place on Blizzard. The difference is I think he has more options for potential connections on Jovian. He, I believe, has something going with Jeff right now, potentially. Him and Angela are tight. So Angela and James are tighter, with Amanda being kind of the odd person out if there is the Blizzard 3. And he is just a seasoned, skilled player. He's played a bunch of these games. He's done well in a bunch of these games. Kind of strong, well-rounded player. So I think that he has a really good game skill set. The problem is I think he's too big of a threat that people aren't going to let him get that deep into the game. So if people try to pick him up as a number 2 for a couple votes, it's eventually going to be a point where everyone just collectively turns to each other and says, hey, we can't let him go any further. If he gets to the end, he's going to win. He has this underdog Blizzard story. So
Yeah.
that's
And-
where I see his game going.
And I guess you could see it as an underdog Lazar story. Things that I've heard is he's also had a very tumultuous ride because this game for him isn't just about playing
Yeah.
the game and winning. It's got a little bit more of emotional context.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I thought he might drop out.
Yeah.
But I think now that we're getting close to this jury point, it might stay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No. I think I'd be surprised if he dropped at this point. But I think in the next two, I think if he survives the next vote or two, he could make it decently deep. But I think it's going to be harder for him to get to the very end because I think the only person who'd be willing to take him to the very end at this point would be Angela and like maybe Amanda. But right now, from what I've seen from both him and Angela, they both view Amanda as being more expendable because they know, hey, they're going to come after our numbers. Let's have them chop Amanda, and then Amanda and James will want to stick together and try to protect each other.
So we've got James here. Is what is number 5?
He's number 8.
Number 8. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, because we're moving backwards.
Yeah,
great. So we're in this spot mostly because of the connections that we've already had and that are still in the game, right? That we've been relying on the whole time.
Or sorry, repeat that.
As far as like alliances, connections, idols, whatever else, this is why we're at this spot right here.
Oh, why he's at number 8?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think
not much except for Angela, maybe Jeff, right?
Oh, for his connections. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, those I think are his main potential options to utilize at this point.
Okay.
I think Danny could utilize him as well, but I haven't heard any real inklings of any of the other Jovians showing interest in working with him.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next player.
So our next player, we have
Ryan.
everyone's favorite smile, Mr. Ryan.
And it's a Jovian.
It is a Jovian.
We haven't even finished all the Blazarians yet.
That is correct.
Okay.
So Ryan right now he's in a pretty decent spot. I mean, he's solidly in these Jovian numbers. He kind of is in this weird spot where he has like a target threat on him because he's kicked butt in a bunch of challenges. But he's also not viewed as being like a very strong kind of like strategic and like strategically social player. I think he's very social. Everyone really likes him a lot, but I don't know if he's going to get credit for the moves that his alliance makes. I don't know if he's being the one that's being the most proactive in terms of forming these relationships with people, or at least that's how other people are perceiving it based on the confessionals I'm getting. One example of this is I heard from a different contestant that I'll just refresh. So he's in a tight alliance with Ryan, Alex, and Lena. And so those three are working closely together, and they were told that by Blazar that the perception is that Lane is the physical challenged player, Ryan's the beauty, and that Alex is the strategic player.
Oh, so we got brains, bronze, and beauty all in one one group. Okay.
So
it does sound like a triple threat.
So the problem with that though is he's viewed as the bottom on his alliance. So if he is able to go deep with this alliance, I don't think he's in a strong position to get jury votes over his competitors. Also, kind of the bigger faction with that is this group of players, they've worked on getting Josh, which I think was a solid number for them. The problem is I haven't heard any Blazars talking about how any of those 3 or 4 players have showed an inkling of wanting to work with them. Where I have with kind of the other faction of players, which we'll touch on in a bit. But it's going to be at a point where these two kind of groups of Jovians are going to come head to head, and I think that the other group is doing a better job of persuading the Blazars to go with them when that time comes, and then this group is going to get targeted. And I don't know if Ryan's going to be the first that gets targeted, but I think he's going to be in a tough spot once his allies get plucked off. I don't see him having the relationships and the bonds to carry him through to get him deeper into the game after that.
So if you think in that core 3, Ryan's on the bottom, between Alex and Lena, which one is running the show? And is that noticeable? I know we'll talk about them in a second, but I'm just curious.
It's interesting. I think that Lena is probably the one who actually is running the show more. I think Alex is getting the perception of it, and Alex has even alluded to it where he feels like he's been playing more social rather than strategic. And Lena has said kind of the same thing where she's been perceived as a challenge person, so she's trying to tone that down. But she's been the one who's been doing a lot of, has more of the strategic mind for a lot of this, which I think is actually which we'll touch on. I think it's a really good spot for Lena because she's in a very strategic spot, or she's playing a strategic game that people aren't really seeing. But a huge thing that can win people a lot of games is if you can kind of hide what you're doing during the game and then like spill it all out at Final Tribal Counselor at the end of the game. People are impressed and you can win that, and so you kind of hide your threat level the whole way while being a big threat going deeper into the game.
Maybe behind such gorgeous meat shields over here as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because that's what you did in your season. You had 2 meat shields, right? That you protected yourself with?
Yep, I did have a couple of meat shields.
I wonder who they could be. Let's go ahead and move on to our next player. Oop, did we miss one?
We missed one.
There we go, Miss
So,
Meredith.
little sneak peek for ahead. So number 6, I have Meredith. So Meredith, also a first-time player. I think she's done a very solid job. She is integrated into a pretty solid alliance right now, and also has potential options working across the line with Blazar. So just going into a little bit of her game, she started out at the bottom, not fully on the bottom, but she was towards the bottom of her old tribe. She was used as decoy vote, I think once, and then basically at the swap, had a solid swap, was able to work through that. And she is working very tightly with a lot from her swap tribe, so primarily Danny and Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also has good rapport with Angela, but they haven't, it's one of these, we'll work together maybe in a couple of votes, but I can't lock it in now because I still have to stay all tribe strong.
Right, because if they had lost one more, her, Danny, Jeff, and
gone.
Angela, she was out of here. Angela's out of here. So
Yeah.
you can't sit there and say, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but no, this is like post-merge.
Right, that's
yeah.
what I'm saying, is I understand exactly why she's playing that way.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a position, but so I think she's in a decent position in that she's in what I perceive as to be the most powerful alliance in the game. The problem is the people she's with are Danny and Jeff, and both of them, I think, are playing the game a little bit more strategically, at least from what I'm hearing from confessionals. I think that they're trying to utilize different relationships more than Meredith is at this point. Meredith, for example, she's talked about keeping a girl alliance as an option, as something that's come up.
With whom?
So there's 4 women in the game. So Amanda, who she has not utilized at all, and I think that's the big glaring spot in Meredith's game right now, is she needs to pull in Amanda because she has Angela as an option. Angela, I think, is an extremely, extremely savvy player, and I think that if she's up against Angela at the end, Angela's going to have a better story and is going to probably win the game. And then Lane is the other option. But the problem is, like, all 4 of these women are kind of in these different factions right now.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think is always kind of an option on the table, but usually people go with who they feel good with and who they trust and who they think can actually carry them further in the game. And I think Meredith right now sees that sticking with like Danny and Jeff, she has a really good shot to go further and deeper into the game, and there's no real reason to trust that she should leave her alliance and then try to get Amanda, who she's not even going after, and then work with Angela, and then try to pull Elena, who she's also not really that close with either.
Mm-hmm.
And then they still are down 4 to 6 men, so it's like, it's not a very...
Yeah, I'm so curious because we're talking about Lena, Alex, and Ryan being a threesome in Jovian, and also Jeff, Danny, and Meredith being a threesome in Jovian. But the lowest Jovians that you've put, other than Josh, are Ryan and Meredith, who are on these opposite factions. Like, that's super interesting to me. Like, so you don't think that one of those factions would get swallowed up completely?
Well, here's the thing. I think that
who is making the mistake at not trying to work with the Blazarians? Is it Meredith and Ryan specifically, or is it one of those groups?
I think it's Ryan's group specifically. However, I think that what could happen is, I think that each one is on the bottom of their faction. I think Ryan and Meredith have the lowest chance to win against their current alliance mates if they're there. So I think that if they rise to the top and they get there, they still have the hardest path out of the 3 to win the game.
Understood. And this is just your power rankings.
Yes. So,
got it.
So basically, it's not how I think the boot order is going to
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. So I think that I think both Meredith and Ryan need to do something to mix up the game more and turn on their own alliance in order to get more credibility for executing moves and, making the game happen. Because I think up to this point, which we'll get to, the other players higher on this list are actively doing more in the game to get sway from the jury once that happens.
Well, that is what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for a big shakeup. Let us know in the
Same.
comments who you want to see shake up the game and how. But in the meantime, why don't we move on to your next player?
Yeah, so the next
Which we
player
already know
is
is Angela.
Angela. So Angela I have as the highest rated Blizzard in the game. The reason I have her here is that a lot of people, she's won a game before, she's played a lot of online games and has done well, almost won another live game. She's a really, really solid player, and a lot of people know that she's won these games and they view her as a shield. So right now you have Jeff and Danny, who are both wanting to pull her in to work and use her as a shield, take her deep into the game, and probably chop her as she gets close to the end. The thing with Angela is she's a very good speaker, and she's quietly played a very strong social game. Everyone on Old Blizzard has really liked her. She's playing under the radar, kind of trying to lay low a little bit, but get in good with everybody individually. So that if she is at the end, you might look at her game and think, she hasn't maybe influenced everything that's going on, but then everyone on the jury might have recognized, hey, I've had conversations with her, good strategic conversations with her. She understands the game. She can plead a very strong case at the end. She also has the underdog narrative if she is able to get far and get there. And her and Meredith are now the two, so far, individual immunity winners. I think if you underestimate these ladies and drag them far enough, they could still get a couple immunities in the end. When Danny and Jeff think that they can cut her, maybe they can't. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you let her go deep enough, and if she gets a couple challenges under her belt, she could get to the end, and if she gets to the end, she's going to be a heck of a competitor to go against as for somebody to try to beat at the end. So I think, and she also is somebody who is not afraid to take swings and not afraid to make moves in this game. So she doesn't have really much, if any, power right now, but she has Jeff, who's interested in working with her, Danny, who's interested in working with her, Meredith, who's interested in working with her, and then Amanda, that's going to be kind of Amanda's last connection. So even though she's pretty much on the bottom, she has potentially 4 people right there, and then if she pulls 4 people plus her, that's half of the cat. And James. Yeah. So she could, new trans tribal, if that works forward, that could alliance. Be a powerful alliance. The problem is, how can she actually get to the end? Because I think she's going to probably be safe for a couple votes, but getting out of this kind of bottom position into a powerful one is going to be the tough spot for her. Now I know, we also know, just like James, Angela has come into this game with a lot of success, played very aggressively in the past, and has chosen to play a different way. Do you think she's succeeding in that? Yeah, I think she's doing a really good job with that because she hasn't been the target of really anybody coming in the crosshairs. She's been on the bottom ever since the swap because she got a pretty tough swap, but she was able to keep herself safe, get Savannah sent home. At the merge, she's made herself like a working, or a person that people do want to work with. So when they target Blizzard, they're not coming for her, they're coming for G, they're coming for Jorge. They're coming for Jorge. I think that they'll come for Amanda before they come for Angela. So I think that she's in a good spot to make it at least a few more rounds, but it's just going to be, like I've said, can she get over that hump and get into either a power position or find a way to finagle her way to the end? I'm so curious. Let's go to our next one. Who do we have? All right. We're coming to the end here. Alex. So I love Alex. I love Alex. I love watching Alex play. So Alex is also a first timer in these games, and I have him. Yeah. He's played an online game before, but he's never played an in-person game. Okay. I confirmed that with him today. Okay. Alex, I think, is in a really interesting sleeper spot in this game because he is, he's in a very strong alliance right now with both Elena and Ryan. I don't think people perceive him as big of a threat as they see. I don't think they're going to target him because I don't think they see him as an immunity threat as much as the other two. And Blizzard sees him as a strategic threat. I don't think that the Jovians see him as a strategic threat as much. And I think the main reason for this ranking is he's doing a good job of utilizing Josh. I think that's a number that he could utilize and kind of claim, hey, I brought this person in. The problem for him is he needs to outdo the other alliance that's there. He needs to the Danny, Jeff, Meredith alliance, I think that is going to come to a head. Yeah. And they're utilizing Angela and James. His tribe is utilizing Josh, yeah. They're trying to utilize Josh, but they need to figure out, Amanda's just hanging out there. Amanda's hanging out there. I don't know why they aren't trying to utilize her. I really want that to happen. I see exactly what you see. Yeah, me too, and that's what I'm hoping for, because I think that it could happen. Josh, or I think with Alex, if he could, I just don't feel like he's going to get targeted first out of his Jovian alliance too. So I think he might be able to survive a round or two and hopefully be able to use his social game to pull in other numbers. My question for him is, like, I feel like he's consistently put himself in these good spots where he's kind of off everyone's radar, even though he did get 5 votes the previous round.
But that was to do with something very specific.
Exactly. Okay. The only reason he was targeted was because of the Galaxy Curse. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for him. I think he also is, I'm curious, like, I see a lot of what he's doing and how he's positioned in the game, and I think he's doing a really good job of it. My big thing for him is he able to articulate it when if he does get to final travel? Can he answer the questions, explain how he used people for his strategic benefit, how he formed certain bonds, certain moves he made?
So does that mean he has to really be selective about who he brings to the end, should he get to the end? Who could he talk against in that way and win? I mean, he is very quiet. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But articulate, I'm not sure. I don't get to talk to him that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think that a lot of it comes down to perception on things, and if he can, I feel like there's not one in particular that it's like, oh, like I think if he's at the end with Josh, he'll probably
Josh.
Yeah.
Who else? Is it final 2?
Ryan potentially. I don't think we know that yet.
Okay.
2 or 3, but it's hard to say because it depends on how the game unfolds, and a lot depends too on how jury talks amongst each other in these games when they're at the jury house, and then also how they explain their moves at the end. So it's not just because you can out-talk somebody, if you don't have the game to back it up, I don't think it's going, like, even if you're not a great talker, you can still win in that regards. So it's going to be interesting. I feel like it's a little early to try to figure out exactly who he could beat in terms of his ability to talk at the end, but it's going to be, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of your game in a way. Like, you knew that you could beat Bergen talking, and you made him believe that he should underestimate you, bringing you to the final 2, right? And then, what was the vote at the end? Wasn't it a 4-3?
It was 4-3. I will say that was genuine, though. I did not feel confident talking in those situations. So,
but you talked really, really well.
Well, thank
impressive.
you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we'll see what happens with Alex. I really genuinely do hope that his alliance is able to get some traction, because my fear is that, which we'll touch on in a couple moments, but I fear that the other tribe is going to, the other alliance is going to pull in the numbers and then kind of railroad through the game.
Okay, well, let's move on. We're almost done. How many more do we have?
3 more.
Tres más.
So I have Lena in my number 3 power spot. Lena is great. She's full of personality and a lot of sass, which I love. My kind of girl. I would love to play with her. But I think with her, she is in a really good spot for her alliance of 3, because she's perceived as more of the mastermind, or she's perceived as more of the challenge beast, and she's planning, I think, to tone that down a little bit. She said how she does not want to, how the worst place to finish in a challenge, an individual challenge, is 2nd place, which I think is a very articulate thing to point out, because you get no benefit from 2nd place, but people view you as being good at challenges and as a threat. So she's cognizant of that. I think she has good self-awareness. She needs to, ultimately, I think the big thing she needs to do is take a swing at the Danny and Jeff group. She needs to utilize Blizzar and also Josh to go forward in the game. I wish I could think of it off the top of my head, but in her last confessional, she pointed out 1 or 2 things that she was able to kind of strategically influence either a vote or part of the game that has happened. And it's something that I don't think other people recognize, but that is kind of like a good tidbit that she can hide to herself and be able to say, if she does go to the end with Alex and she does go to the end with Ryan, that she can say, hey, you guys just thought of me as the challenge person when I've actually been controlling a lot of this stuff behind the scenes.
Proof.
And here's exactly.
Yes.
And that is a huge like weapon you can pull out of your arsenal.
I think the best players will be threats, unknown threats, and then they'll make a move, and then they'll sink into the shadows. It's almost like the move wasn't made, only to pop up again at Final Tribal Council. Oh wow, I've got all this evidence that I'm a great player.
Yeah.
Is that her?
That could be her.
Yeah. But we need to see like 1 more of those in order for it to be really evident for the other players, or
I think yes, but I think the move has to be that she has to be the one that cannibalizes her Jovians first. And I think that if she can do that, and even if she gets credit for it, I think that she's going to be in a good spot. And I don't think she even needs to hide it, but you have these two factions that are kind of slowly budding and slowly building, and they have to swing at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she has to take the first swing and be successful at it. And then she can kind of lay back and throw everyone else as the higher person. But she's in a good spot to do it. It just needs to happen. And I'm not sure that I'm not sure when it's gonna happen.
And that's why she's number 3 instead of number 1 or 2.
Exactly.
Okay, well tell me who number 2 is.
All right, so number 2 I have Jeff, who is...
Again, this picture kills me every time.
Yeah, Jeff has been a vibe during confessionals with those sunglasses, with the hair, everything. I'm a big Jeff fan. I think he is being underestimated by a lot of people out there. He has a good pulse on the game. I think he's doing well. He is like in a good strategic spot. I haven't heard anybody bring him up as being like someone that they want to target or somebody that they want to potentially go after. I think that he hasn't really verbalized it, but I think he's utilizing Danny as a shield. He also has good rapport with both James and Angela, and I think that he could leverage that, and he could say, hey, I'm the one who brought in James and Angela, if that is the group that does kind of take over the game at that point. I think that he's played a couple games before. He said he hasn't done great in them, and he's even alluded to certain things where he's mentioned how he's playing differently this time, playing smarter, being more cautious in certain ways. The big thing for him is going to be which I'll touch on is, I think at this point, he's not going to beat Danny if he gets to the end with Danny. So I think if he can kind of ride this spot and then chop Danny at a certain point and then explain that clearly to the jury, he has a very, very good shot to win.
I know we already discussed the Zappa vote that Jeff used, and I understand the rationale. I'm curious if you would have used that Zappa vote.
I don't know. The thing is, he did tell Danny about it, so I think by which he was probably used to build trust. And honestly, a Zappa vote isn't that big of a game-changing. It can be, but
not when it was used the way that it was just used.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I think his fear was that Josh was going to flip over and it was going to be a 6-6 draw, and it was more an insurance policy. So I don't think he used it poorly in that regard. It could be a better weapon that he uses down the line. I think ultimately his smartest move would have not to tell anybody about it.
Do you think Danny took that advantage and used it so that Danny wouldn't have to worry about that advantage in the future?
No, Jeff was the one that used that.
Oh, okay, for sure. Yeah. Okay, great, because I'm not privy to these, but I do know that we have one player left on this list.
Yeah, or I don't, maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
There was a lot that was revealed in the last confessional, and I'm brained in on a couple things. But at any rate, Jeff, I think, is playing a good game, but I think if he's gonna win, and I think he's in a good spot to go very, very deep, but I think he needs to differentiate his game from Danny and ultimately probably take out Danny down the line. The good thing with him is I think he's hiding really well in the shadows, and I don't think anybody's going to target him for quite a while.
Wonderful. All right, well, I know who the last player is, and I'm 100% in agreement, but you tell me your rationale.
Yeah, Danny is honestly running circles around everybody in this game right now, to put it lightly. He is very well... Yes, Danny. So they're set up very, very well. Basically, Danny has this alliance going, as we touched on. Danny's with Jeff, Danny's with Meredith, has a potential cross alliance, kind of a almost threats alliance going with James and Angela. They want to bring them in at some point in the future when it makes sense. I'm guessing it's going to be the next round. If not the next round, it's going to be the round after that. But I think they'll keep both James and Angela in the game for when it's convenient for Danny to make a move. The other two are very loyal to Danny. Danny also is responsible for flushing Jorge's idol, which nobody knows about, which is a huge, huge move in the game.
We want tea. I want the tea on this.
So Danny and Jorge had a conversation right before the final 12 vote, and then Danny said, I can't tell you who it is, but I do want to work with you, and right now it's like hearing between you and James, and basically put that out there for Jorge, and then I think that specifically led Jorge to, I don't want to say panic, but to put the vote, play the idol for himself versus play it for G. It put paranoia in Jorge, and it worked. And then it gave them solidly the numbers, it flushed an idol, and then Now Jorge, I'm pretty sure, is out of the game, or is not in a good spot. At
We'll
least.
find out here in like 10 minutes or so, I believe.
Yeah. So basically, that is a huge move that I don't think anybody knows about. Danny has an idol that nobody knows about. Danny also got information from Savannah on the old tribe, to Savannah and Jeff, that both Ryan and Elena know each other from Live to Give previously, and Danny decided to take out Savannah so that Danny would be the only person in the game who knew that information. So Danny is just like running circles around everybody.
We have the most information of the game, which is the most important. We've got advantages, we've got alliances and relationships.
And Danny's thought right now is Danny's realized that they've kind of built up a little bit bigger of a persona, and in confessionals they've just been saying how they want to fade into the background. They don't really care where the votes go for these first couple ones, as long and they're going to build up their rapport as it gets deeper into the game, and is downplaying a lot of their game right now. Danny is also solid in challenges. I don't know if that's really been evident as of lately, but I think for individual challenges, Danny could do really, really well. So
I met with our former Alliance member earlier this week, Nick Robeson. We talked all about challenges. And I did play a game with Danny before. Danny is amazing at challenges. I want to quickly talk about the genius behind Danny in attempting to throw a recent challenge earlier. Did you notice that?
Has it been confirmed?
I don't know it's been confirmed.
But it was all confirmed.
I heard that it was talked about potentially in confessionals to save Mojo, a previous cast member of mine as well. Watching that was so expert. They went back and forth in the
disky business.
Business, where they're all holding all four ropes and trying to stack the immunity blocks all the way up. Mojo's tribe kept dropping, and then it would get to Danny, who's expert at balance. And after about 4 or 5 times of dropping, you hear Mojo's tribe drop again, and for a slight moment, Danny's face goes, and then boop. So fun to watch, so clever. I know Danny is not only capable of making individual moves, but that move would have not only saved their friend, but also kicked Angela out of the game. That would have been a double whammy.
Yeah.
That is how smart this player is.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Danny's playing a very, very good game right now. And I think, that being said, there is potential for Danny to get taken out by the Ryan. It's Ryan and Alex specifically that are interested in targeting Danny in the next couple of rounds.
And they're smart too.
I don't think they have the numbers to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if they do get the numbers to do it though. So right now, from where it's at, I think that Danny is in definitely the best position in the game, but is not as well hidden as Jeff, for example. So I think Jeff has I would say right now, I think Jeff has the best shot to get to the end, but Danny has the best shot to win the game.
Right, should they get to the end.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for going through your power, what do you call this again? Power rankings. Because this is, again, not the necessarily order of elimination that you think.
Exactly.
But this is like how the power is stacking up at this point in the game. So curious to see what happens next. So I'm assuming you're rooting for Danny.
I'm not rooting for Dan. I'm rooting for Amanda.
And
also Angela.
Okay.
But I think at this point, if I had to put $1 million on who I think was going to win, I would definitely pick Danny right now.
Yeah. Well, I feel the exact same. I'm also rooting for Amanda. I would love to see a big trans tribe swap that mixes up the game.
Yes.
Only time will tell. Until then, I think you and I have some unfinished business to get to because we're about to go play a game of our own.
Yes, we're about to play a mini.
We're about to play a Big Brother mini.
Secret Final 2
so,
right here.
do we have a secret Final 2? We'll shake on it this time. This time I'm your true number 1.
Okay.
All right?
Good with that.
Okay, crossing fingers, toes. All right, thank you everybody. We'll say goodnight for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.